Did you know that, originally, high heels were made for men only? In early 17th century Europe, high heels were a sign of masculinity and high social status. High heels starting being worn by ladies in late 17th century, the high heel trend began to spread to women's fashion. And by the 18th century, high-heeled shoes had split along gender lines. Until the 1950s, shoe heels were typically made of wood, but in recent years they have been made of a variety of materials including leather, suede, and plastic. High heels footwear has a long history dating as far back as ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, wearing very thick-soled sandals was an indication of upper-class status. Butchers in ancient Egypt also elevated themselves by wearing platform sandals to keep blood away from their feet. After the Great Schism in the 11th century, the Pope notably began wearing red-heeled shoes. During the medieval period in Europe, both men and women wore wooden pattens under or around their shoes to raise themselves out of the dirty and excrement-filled streets. Modern high heels were brought to Europe by Persian emissaries of Abbas the Great in the early 17th century. Men wore them to imply their upper-class status. Only someone who did not have to work could afford, both financially and practically, to wear such extravagant shoes. Royalty such as King Louis XIV wore heels, and his predecessor King Louis XIII introduced the red heel to the court of French nobility. As the shoes became a fashion trend, other members of society began donning high heels. And some elite members ordered their heels to be made even higher to distinguish themselves from the lower classes. In the late 1780s, the societal implications of wearing high and thin heels became fixed. High, thin heels represented femininity and the supposed superficiality and extravagance of women. Heels went out of fashion starting around 1810, and then, in 1860, they surged in popularity, with an average height of about 2.5 inches. The tall, skinny stiletto heel was invented in 1950, and quickly became an emblem of female sexuality.